In this video, I'll be simplifying web scraping, helping you understand how it works. And we're going to be seeing one application of web scraping, which is an example here where I'm scraping Netlify, Adyen, Vercel, and Microsoft for the current openings on their site. So this way, instead of having to go to these different platforms to see what rows are open, I can easily open this page and I can have access to those open rows. Sometimes platforms provide you with APIs which you can use to get specific information. These APIs might require authentication or not. For example, an API that allows you to get how many followers a user has, that may not require authentication. But some other times, platforms do not provide you with these APIs and you may need to extract certain information. And this is where web scraping comes useful because you can imitate the flow of a user going on a website to extract information. But in this case, you'll be doing that programmatically. And that's what I'm going to be showing you in this video. So here I am interested in 4 companies. I am interested in Netlify, Adyen, Vercel, and Microsoft. And these are the career pages. So for Netlify, this is the career page. And for Adyen, this is the careers page here. For Vercel, this is the careers page. And for Microsoft, this is the careers page or jobs page. Like I said, what I'm going to do now is I am going to sort of visit this website or visit this page and then extract specific information from there, which is the scraping. So here in this get jobs, this function, I'm going to have this object where I'm going to have the company as the key and an array for the company. So Netlify currently has an empty array and so for the rest. So everything here is in this career paths array. So here I can say for const career paths, so I'm going to be looping through each of these career paths. Then I'll use object destructuring to destructure the key and the jobs page from the career path objects. And now let's start with Netlify. So I'm going to have a variable called job selector, and this is going to refer to the CSS selector of the job element on the page. So here I can say if key is equals to Netlify, then I'm going to assign this job selector to be something. Now, how do I know what that job selector is going to be? And this is where you do some work. So here in this Netlify careers page, I'm going to inspect elements. And in this inspection, I can look for the element that holds this text. So currently, this is the element holding this text. So this is a TH element. And in this TH element, it has this class, careers, results, title, and this anchor tag here. So with this selector, I can come here now to say the job selector for Netlify is TH, which is the element, dot careers, results, title, which is the class. And I can stop here or I can say I want to get the anchor tag. So this is a normal CSS selector that you would use for selecting this anchor element, and I can use that selector also here. Okay, now that we have this selector, I'm going to say if jobs selector, then I'm going to make a fetch request. So const response, await fetch, and I'm going to fetch the jobs page. So this is going to make like a normal get request to this page, just like when you open this page on your browser. Now from here, I can get the response text, response.text. So this is going to return the text version of that HTML page, and I can actually log this so we see. So console log response text, and I'm using Astro for this project. You can use any framework of your choice. This is the server side, and in this server side, I'm going to have this code where I call get jobs. So now if I should refresh this page and I check the server, what you can see in this server is the HTML version of that page. So you can see some elements here. Well, we have a bunch of things here, but like I said, it's kind of the HTML string of the page that we saw earlier. If you're wondering why I'm calling get jobs in the server side instead of on the client side, well, I'm doing that for 2 reasons. The first reason is because I want the jobs to be available from the server before the page is rendered. But the second reason is I cannot actually do it from the client, because when I try to make a request on the client, I'm going to have this CORS policy. And CORS policy is a policy implemented by browsers which avoids the sharing of resources between different origins that do not match. So I'm trying to send a request from localhost to this Netlify origin here. CORS policy is going to block that request. But when I do this from a server, since CORS policy is not applied on servers, then that would work fine. Okay, now that I have this text, I'm going to use a third-party library called Cheerio. Cheerio is kind of the jQuery for the server, so it allows you to pass and manipulate HTML and XML. So with Cheerio, you can pass a HTML string, and then you can use CSS selectors to extract specific elements from that string. So you need to have this installed. Currently in my package.json, I have Cheerio installed. So here I'm going to say $Cheerio, which I've already imported at the top here, .load, and I'm going to pass this response text. Then I'm going to have this jobs variable where I use this Cheerio selector, and I'm going to pass the jobs selector. So this is basically going to return all the elements that have this selector. Now I can loop through each of those elements using jobs.each, and here I can have function this. I'm going to type this with Cheerio.Cheerio. Then here I'm going to get the job node, which is going to be again passing this $sign with this. Now you can check out the Cheerio documentation to learn some of these things specifically. Then I can get the href. Remember again, we are getting this anchor element. So I can get the href and say job node.attribute href. I can also get the text in that element by saying job node.text. And now that we have this on these jobs objects that I have earlier, I can now say jobs objects, the key, and I'm going to push a new object where the href points to this href and the text points to this text. Currently I have a TypeScript error because this can return undefined. So I'm going to use this operator to return string. So if this returns undefined, then this is just going to be a normal string. Now this jobs object now has Netlify with all of the jobs having the href and the text property. And now if we come back here to this page here, you can see I loop through the jobs map. For each of the company, I'm going to have h2 with the company. So here I have h2 Netlify, and then I have this div with some jobs, and then I pass the filtered jobs here. I have this filter variable which is currently empty, but the idea is that I can also pass some filters on the client side, and then here I can get the filtered jobs. So what we have here is now Netlify, and we have these two jobs, which if we go back here and I click on the Netlify link, you can see that these are the two jobs coming from here. Let's try out the second company, which is Adyen. So here I'm going to say if key is equals to Adyen, then I'm going to do something. So now I have to come here again to Adyen and check what the element looks like, or what the selector for the element is. And when I inspect, you can see that the anchor tag here has a class of vacancies list item link. So I'm going to copy that. So here for Adyen, I'm going to say the jobs selector is equals to a.this. And once I get the anchor tag, that is all I need. You can see here all the jobs for Adyen have been extracted. Now if I should open this Adyen's careers page, you see we have all of these jobs here. But one thing we notice is that our jobs stops at merchant fraud analyst, but then we have more jobs after merchant fraud analyst. So what's happening here is that the Adyen's careers page uses JavaScript to populate the remaining jobs. And I can show you that if I should disable JavaScript from the dev tools, now if I should refresh this page, you see that the only thing we have here is this list of jobs stopping at merchant fraud analyst, which is here. So when the JavaScript is run, then it's going to populate the remaining jobs. And the reason why we cannot see the remaining jobs is that when we make a fetch request here, this fetch request is not going to run any JavaScript. It is just going to get the first HTML that it sees. Now this is one of the things that can make web scraping complicated, because if you need to have JavaScript running before you can see some information, then you have to do some extra things than just fetching. And later on in this video, I'm going to show you how you can execute JavaScript when doing web scraping, but let's just keep it like this for at the end. Now let's go to the third company, which is Vercel. Now, in the case of Vercel, let's open the careers page. And when you inspect, this is the anchor tag here. You can look through the classes to see what would help you extract this. But currently, these classes are not helping. The other thing you can look at is the href attributes. So we can look for anchor tags that starts with /careers/. So here for Vercel, I can say jobs selector is equals to A with href, and then I can use this symbol with the equal sign to look for /careers/. So this in CSS allows you to select an element where the attribute starts with this. And now if I should close this, you see we've been able to get all the Vercel jobs here, because these are all the elements on that page that match the selector that we have here. Now, one thing you notice is that if I should go to this Vercel careers page, the anchor tag here contains this text at the top, this text here, and this read more. And that is why you see that our jobs now have account executive mid-market UK and U, and then we have United Kingdom, and then we have read more. And that's because we are getting all of the text. When we do job node.text, it is going to concatenate all the text that we have. Now, I'm not going to do it in this video, but you can also go along to remove this read more, remove the United Kingdom, or extract specifically what you want, but I'm just going to keep this here. Now, one more company we want to look at is Microsoft. But in the case of Microsoft, this is where we're going to execute some JavaScript. So in this Microsoft careers page, you have this which shows you all of the careers, and you can see we can even go next and next. This doesn't show the whole list. But not just that, we can also search for a job here, software engineer, and then I can say find jobs, and then this is going to return the results that match software engineer. So here, while I'm scraping this page, I'm going to use JavaScript to find specific jobs. Now, after this jobs selector, because with Microsoft we're going to do something different, I'm going to say if key is equals to Microsoft, then I'm going to do something here. Here I'll have a function called get Microsoft jobs. This function is going to take the jobs page and the job part prefix. Then here I'm going to have my jobs array. I'll use my job obj type, and I have the empty array. Job obj is coming from here, which has href and text. And then this is where I'm going to use Puppeteer. So Puppeteer is a Node.js library which provides a high-level API to control Chrome or Chromium over the DevTools protocol. So think of it as you open a browser in headless mode. You cannot see the browser, but in the JavaScript world, that browser exists, and then you can trigger JavaScript, trigger button clicks, or do all of those things that you can do on a normal browser as a user. And I also have this browser helper where I have my Puppeteer here, and I have this function called launch browser. It takes a URL and a callback, and then we launch the browser and we open a new page on the browser. Then we go to the URL on that browser, we run our callback, and after that callback, we close the browser. So here I have imported launch browser. So I'm now going to say await launch browser, and I'm going to pass the jobs page. And then I'm going to have my callback where I receive the page arguments. So the first thing I'm going to do is to get my input selector. And for that, again, I would come here to inspect. And this input selector, let's look at the class. The class is not really helping. This class is not really specific to this input. So I'm going to look for something that is specific to this input. And the best thing I can find here is this area label with the string. I'm going to copy this string from here and paste it here. So here I can be sure that this is the selector that applies to the input. I can also put input here just to be more specific. Then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for the selector to exist. These are, of course, Puppeteer specific stuff. So you can check out the documentation for Puppeteer if you want to know the details. But basically what I'm doing here is based on a specific time, I'm going to wait until this selector exists on the page. Now with the selector existing, I can say await page type. And I'm going to type into this input selector, and what I'm going to type is software engineer, just the same way we typed software engineer here. Now after typing, the next thing I'm going to do is click find jobs. So that means I also have to get the selector for this button. The selector I can use here, the class is not really helping, but what is helping again is the area label. And this is going to be button area label. And this area label, the label is find jobs. Now, one thing you also need to know with web scraping is that if Microsoft should change their web page and put new classes or new area labels, then I won't be able to scrape it. So this is one of the difficult parts about web scraping, is that you are so dependent on the website that you are scraping. So if anything changes in that website, you also need to change your code to be able to extract your information as clearly as possible. I can also choose to await for the button to exist, but here I know that once the input exists, then the button is going to exist, so I don't need to await. But in some cases you might also need to wait for the button selector to exist. But now I can just go ahead to say page.click, and I'm going to click the find jobs button selector. Now we have all of these jobs here. Now I can again inspect on each of these jobs to know what the selector would be. So I'm looking through the divs here, and one of the divs that can help me is this div with area label job item something. So I can use this div to get this element. So I'm going to have a div area label starts with job item. Then I'm going to await for the jobs selector to exist, because remember, after I click this button, the page is going to change. So now I'm going to wait for this job selector to exist, and then once it exists, I can now get all the jobs. So here I'm going to say jobs await page.evaluate. Evaluate is a function that allows you to run a callback function in the browser context. And then I'm just going to paste this code that I already have. So what I'm doing here is I query all the jobs, and for each of the jobs, I'm going to get the job ID by looking at the area label and replacing job item with an empty string. So here where we have job item space this ID, this job ID is now going to point to this ID here after replacing job item. Then I'm also going to get the job title, and the job title is available on the h2 element in the div. So here I can now say that it should return a text with the text content of the job title, and then the link is going to be the job path prefix plus the job ID. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, well, that's because if you look at it here, you can see that Microsoft doesn't really have an anchor tag that I could easily extract the href from. So maybe they probably have like a click event that navigates the user. I'm not really sure, but because I cannot find that href here, that is why I have to generate my own href using the job path prefix and the job ID. Then the second argument I'm going to pass to evaluate is the jobs selector and the job path prefix. This is because I'm using const, so I'm going to keep this at let. I also need to return this. I wasn't returning it earlier. By the way, the code for all of this is going to be available in a repository, and I'll paste the link below so you can come verify this. So here I get all the jobs for Microsoft, and then here I can now say if the key is Microsoft, then the Microsoft jobs is equals to await get Microsoft jobs, and here I'm going to pass the jobs page, and then I'm going to pass the job path prefix, but currently I haven't destructured that, so I'm going to come here and also get the job path prefix. Okay, so once I get the Microsoft jobs, I can now say jobs obj, and then the key which is Microsoft in this case, and then I'm going to pass the Microsoft jobs. And that's because I didn't return jobs from here. I don't know what's wrong with my formatter, so my document looks a bit scattered. Now that I returned jobs from this get Microsoft jobs, I can now assign it here. And now if we should go here and I refresh, this is going to take some time because on the server, we are visiting some pages running Puppeteer and all of that. And now we have this Microsoft jobs coming here. Now you could even go further to say that when you open the Microsoft jobs page and you search for software engineer, find jobs, you could even go as far as using Puppeteer to come here and click on next a number of times if you wanted. Those are extra things you can do with Puppeteer. Of course, it's going to take more time for the server to process all of this, but it's kind of an idea. So now when we click on this Microsoft here, it's going to point to the Microsoft jobs page, which is this for senior software engineer, and same thing for the links of the others. And now this way, instead of having to visit Netlify to check the careers, Dillion, Vercel, Microsoft, you can easily just create your own page, maybe host it if you want, and then you can see the jobs available in the companies that you are interested in. Now, like I said earlier, web scraping becomes more complex when you have to start doing some JavaScript or interactions. But in the case of Netlify, where we didn't need any JavaScript, all we had to do was just visit that page and get what we want. Same thing in the case of Vercel. But in the case of Dillion, you need Puppeteer to load JavaScript, which would load the remaining jobs. In the case of Microsoft, if you want to search for specific jobs, you can also use Puppeteer for that. Now, when it comes to web scraping, you have to be careful as there are a lot of rules around it, and you should definitely check what the rules or policies are in your country, but different countries have different policies on what you can scrape. For example, most countries would not allow you to scrape like personal data of someone or to scrape something that is behind an authenticated wall. So an information that requires authentication, if you're scraping that and putting in the public, then that's going to be a problem. So you definitely want to be careful. As nice as web scraping can be, you shouldn't use it for every information on the internet. Now, this is just an example of where web scraping can be useful. And actually, many of the job websites that you see today that show you jobs for different companies, they are not really using the APIs of the companies, and it's not like the companies posted the jobs on there. These platforms are probably also scraping these jobs and putting on there. But again, there are a lot of use cases for web scraping. Like I've had a story of someone who was looking for an apartment from a specific organization. And what he did was that he created a cron job that was running on the server at different intervals. And that job would check the page. And if there is like an available apartment, the job would send him an email or a text message. And that way he didn't have to be checking the website every time. Once that cron job is able to scrape from the website, he gets notified of the new available apartment. And now that I think of it, that's an interesting project. So if you would want me to do that, also let me know. But there are a lot of use cases. So if there are specific websites you're interested in certain information and these websites do not provide APIs, maybe web scraping might be a good option to consider. So I hope that this demo has shown you some of the things that you can do with web scraping and also how to go about it with third-party libraries like Cheerio and like Puppeteer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with others, and subscribe for more web demos like this.